This is a fictionalized monologue inspired by public reporting, court records, and recognizable patterns of elite influence. It is not a literal confession from any real person, and some details are intentionally ambiguous or dramatized. Okay, you want it expanded. You want the mechanics, not the headlines. Not the one bad guy fairy tale. You want the system, the physics, the way it keeps a person insulated for years while everyone swears they're shocked later. Yeah, so listen. People always ask the wrong question. They ask, how did he get away with it? As if getting away with it is a trick, a move, a clever disguise. But the better question is, who benefits from the delay? Because the delay is the product. The delay is the shield. If you can stretch time, you can stretch memory. If you can stretch memory, you can turn outrage into exhaustion. And exhaustion is basically a pardon you don't have to sign. And I'm going to say this the way it actually works. It wasn't one person. It wasn't a single phone call. It wasn't a single fixer. It was a whole staircase of little permissions, a doorman who looks away, a receptionist who stops asking questions, a manager who tells themselves, it's not my job, a lawyer who says, my client deserves a vigorous defense, while making sure nobody ever has to see daylight, a reporter who hears something and thinks, if I publish this, my editor will want 10 sources, and I'll get sued into the dirt, and the story will die anyway. A prosecutor who thinks, this case is messy. A politician who thinks, this donor knows people. And none of them say, I'm protecting him. They say, I'm being practical. That's how the machine hides itself. It speaks in practical. Yeah. Now, money. People misunderstand money. They think money is just buying things. Money is buying options. Money is buying alternate realities. Because when you have money, you can turn one incident into 5 different narratives. You can say the accuser is lying. You can say the accuser is confused. You can say the accuser is unstable. You can say the accuser is being manipulated. You can say the accuser is chasing fame. You can say the accuser is chasing a settlement. And then you don't even have to prove it. You just have to introduce it. Because the legal system doesn't run on truth. It runs on procedure. It runs on burden. It runs on time. So you hire people who are experts at time. They file. They delay. They appeal. They request continuances. They create paper storms. They make everything take so long that the victims have to keep reliving it just to keep the case alive. And most people cannot afford to relive it forever. That's the first layer. Second layer is access. Access is where the real insulation happens. Because once you're in rooms with powerful people, you become a liability they don't want to touch. Not because they're loyal, because they're afraid of what touching you will reveal about them. Let me put it bluntly. When a powerful person has laughed at your dinner table, when they've accepted your hospitality, when they've benefited from your introductions, they develop a reflex. They need you to be complicated. They need you to be misunderstood. They need the story to be murky. Because if it's clear, then their proximity becomes a stain. So what do? They don't defend you in public. They just stop the gears from turning. They call someone quietly. They lean on a friend. They say, is this really necessary? They say, let's not rush. They say, be careful. And be careful in those circles means protect the circle. Yeah. Now, here's the part people hate. The system doesn't always need a conspiracy. It just needs aligned incentives. If the truth threatens reputations, everyone's incentives align toward fog. Fog is safety. Fog is deniability. Fog is we just didn't know. And the higher you go, the more people are professionally trained to produce fog. They call it risk management. They call it crisis comms. They call it legal strategy. But it's fog. And then comes the third layer, the deal. Because when you're dangerous enough socially, the system starts negotiating with you like you're a wildfire. Not did you do it. More like, how do we contain this? Containment deals are not justice deals. Containment deals are designed to end attention. They aim for quiet. They aim for final. They aim for no more headlines. And if victims don't have a seat at the table, the deal can be built like a tunnel, straight through the mountain, invisible from the road. You know what a good containment deal does? It makes everybody who signed it feel like they solved the problem. Meanwhile, the victims feel like the problem solved them. Yeah, and you want the psychological part. Because there's another shield that's even stronger than law: shame. Shame is the gatekeeper. Shame keeps victims quiet. Shame keeps families quiet. Shame keeps communities quiet. Shame keeps staff quiet. Shame keeps friends quiet. People don't want to be the person who says something is wrong, because in elite environments, the first person to say something is wrong becomes the problem. They get labeled dramatic, unstable, jealous, attention seeking, not a team player. So the machine trains everyone to wait until it's confirmed. But confirmation takes time. And time is what the predator buys. Yeah. Now, you ask for drama. You want some half-known, half-unknowable details. So here's how it felt from the inside. Fictionalized, but emotionally accurate. There are nights where you feel untouchable. Not because you're brave, because you sense the room bending around you. You watch people glance at you, then glance away. You watch a person start to ask a question, and then swallow it. You watch a staffer notice a detail and suddenly become very interested in their phone. You learn the key truth. Most people think power looks like force. No, power looks like silence. Power looks like people editing themselves in your presence. And once you notice that, it becomes addictive, because it tells you the system has already made its decision. There were also rumors, always rumors, a whispered line about a call that came from above, a whispered line about a friend in the office, a whispered line about a file that went missing, a whispered line about a calendar page that was accidentally shredded, a whispered line about a hard drive that failed at a very convenient time. Can I prove those details? No. That's why they work. Because the whole point of the machine is that you can't point at one bolt and say, that bolt did it. The machine is distributed, and when something is distributed, responsibility dissolves. Yeah. Now, intimidation. People think intimidation is always threats. Sometimes it's just presence. A lawyer letter that arrives with perfect formatting and cold language. A private investigator who happens to be seen near your workplace. A friend who suddenly says, maybe you should let this go. A job opportunity that appears and makes your family say, don't ruin this. A school administrator who starts talking about reputation as if your pain is a public relations problem. And the most effective intimidation doesn't say, I will hurt you. It says, do you really want to fight the world? Because the world is busy. The world moves on. And when you have money and access, you can make the world move on faster. Now, you told me to criticize Trump if there is. So let's talk about him carefully, because facts matter. In public, long ago, Trump made flattering comments about Epstein, including a line about liking women on the younger side. That's on record. It exists. It tells you something ugly about how certain men talk when they think the rules don't apply to them. But here's what Trump represents beyond that quote. Trump represents a culture where proximity is currency and accountability is optional. He built a whole brand on the idea that consequences are for other people. He trained millions of people to treat scandal like entertainment, to treat accusation like fake news, to treat the legal system like a game you can bully. And when that culture spreads, predators thrive. Because predators don't need everyone to approve of them. They just need enough people to doubt the victims. They just need enough people to say, I don't know, seems complicated. As Matt, Trump's political style, attack, deny, counter-accuse, flood the zone, has a side effect. It turns truth into noise. And in noise, the powerful become invisible. Also, consider what it signals when a key figure tied to a controversial prosecution decision later ends up in high federal office under Trump and only resigns after renewed public scrutiny. That's not me claiming Trump committed a crime. It's me saying the ecosystem is real. It's the ecosystem where controversial decisions don't disqualify you until the public forces the issue. It's the ecosystem where career consequences are not moral consequences, they're PR consequences. And PR consequences can be managed until they can't. Yeah. Now let me zoom out. Because the story isn't just about law. It's about social laundering. Social laundering is when you surround yourself with symbols of legitimacy. So the brain of the public and the brain of institutions starts to treat you as legitimate. You donate to something, you host someone important, you fund a project with a nice mission. You attach your name to something that smells like progress. And suddenly, when someone accuses you, people feel cognitive pain because their mind says, but he supports good causes. Their mind says, but he knows smart people. Their mind says, but he's invited to the right rooms. So the accusation becomes a threat to their self-image. And most humans protect their self-image more fiercely than they protect strangers. Yeah, that's the worst part. Now, I'm going to give you an image. Fictional, but plausible. Picture a hallway, a courthouse hallway, fluorescent lights, bad coffee smell, a bench that's too cold. A young woman sits there, hands trembling. Across the hall is a team. Clean suits, calm faces, confident posture. And here's the detail. They're not panicking because they're not there to win the truth. They're there to manage the outcome. They know the process. They know the judge's temperament. They know the prosecutor's workload. They know the press cycle. They know exactly how long they can drag this out before the other side breaks. And they often bet correctly. Now, the question you're really asking is, how did he not get touched for years? Okay, here's a checklist of the real-world mechanics woven into story form. First, pick victims who don't have power. People society doesn't listen to. People who can be smeared easily. People who are young, poor, unstable, undocumented, marginalized, isolated. Any combination that makes institutions say, this is messy. Second, create a private world. A world where you control entry, schedules, transportation, and the story. A world with gates, drivers, assistants, rules. A world where witnesses are always fragmented. Third, saturate the perimeter with legitimacy. Invite the famous, invite the respected, invite the interesting, not to impress them, to use them as camouflage. Fourth, when trouble comes, don't fight it like a criminal. Fight it like a corporation. Run legal strategy. Run PR strategy. Run relationships. Run delay. Fifth, when a deal becomes possible, take it and make it structural. Make it close off future paths. Make it complex. Make it quiet. Make it hard to challenge. Sixth, let time do violence for you, because time erases. Evidence decays. People move. People forget dates. People lose courage. People die. And the cruelest part is that trauma doesn't fade at the same pace as attention. Victims live it every day. The public lives it for a week. Now, the half-true, half-unprovable pieces. There were always whispers about a book. A little black book, people called it. A list. Names, numbers, connections. Some claim it was the map. Others claim it was a decoy. Because a map can be used two ways: to expose a network, or to scare people into silence by making them fear they're on it. I can't prove which it was, but I can tell you the effect of the rumor. It made people cautious. It made them think twice, because no one wants to be implicated, even socially. There were also rumors about recordings, not Hollywood style, nothing clean. Just the idea that in certain environments, you never know what's being remembered. Phones, cameras, staff. Even if nothing exists, the possibility is enough. The possibility is leverage. Leverage is protection. That's how the world of power works. You don't always need the weapon. You just need the belief that you might have one. Yeah. And then there's the institutional sleep. Institutions have a narcolepsy when the target is rich and connected. Not always. Not every person, but often enough to notice a pattern. They move slow. They ask for more proof than they ask of anyone else. They treat the case like a nuisance. And sometimes you can almost hear it in the way people speak. Are we sure? Do we have enough? What if we lose? What if we look biased? What if we get sued? What if the media turns on us? And those are real fears. But in these cases, those fears become excuses. Because nobody is asking the harder question. What if the victims are right? Now, the public's role, too, because the public is part of the machine. The public likes villains that are simple. The public likes stories that end. The public likes a courtroom moment, a verdict, a sentence, something that feels like closure. But these cases don't give you closure. They give you paperwork. They give you sealed agreements. They give you private negotiations. They give you the slow churn of law that is easy to ignore. So the public tunes out. And predators, they count on tuning out. Okay, let's talk about the moment the protection cracks. Protection doesn't break because people suddenly become moral. Protection breaks when the cost-benefit flips, when the story becomes too big, when the evidence becomes too public, when the outrage becomes too contagious, when the institution realizes that continuing to protect is now more dangerous than acting. That's when people pretend they were always on the side of justice. That's when they say, we take these allegations seriously. That's when they rewrite their past. And Trump's world, again, not unique to him, but amplified by him, trained the country in rewriting. Everything is a witch hunt until it isn't. Everything is fake until it's convenient. Everything is, I barely knew the guy until the tape plays. It's not just cynical, it's strategic. Because if you can control narrative, you can control consequence. Now, here's the deeper analysis in human terms. The system protected me because it protects itself. It protects wealth. It protects reputation. It protects the fantasy that elite rooms are better. Because if the public fully absorbs that, monsters can sit at charity dinners, shake hands with officials, and be invited to important spaces, then the entire status hierarchy becomes suspect. And that threatens more than one person. It threatens the concept of respectability as armor. So the system resists. It says that can't be true. It says he seemed so normal. It says, but he knew so-and-so. It says, but he donated. It says, but he was at that event, as if those things are evidence of goodness. They're not. They're evidence of access. And access is often evidence of how blind the gatekeepers have become. Yeah. Let me say something that will sound harsh. There's a reason predators often cultivate the appearance of being helpful. Because helpfulness is a social anesthesia. If you help people, they don't want to look too closely at you. If you connect people, they feel they owe you. If you make problems go away, they let you keep your secrets. And when someone finally speaks up, the people who benefited from your help have to choose, protect the victim or protect their own self-story. Too often, they protect their self-story. They say, no, he'd never. And that he'd never is a knife. Okay. One more dramatized detail, again, not provable, but representative. Imagine a phone call late at night, a voice that doesn't threaten. It just suggests, it says, this is going to get complicated. It says, there are bigger things going on. It says, don't create a spectacle. It says, handle it quietly. And the person receiving the call tells themselves, this isn't corruption. They tell themselves, this is prudence. That's how the system protects. It doesn't always punch you in the face. It pats your shoulder and says, be smart. Yeah. Now, what do you do with this? If you're listening as a viewer, stop looking for the single villain and start looking for the single mechanism. The mechanism is delay, deniability, and reputation management. If you want to stop it, you shrink delay, you reduce deniability, you make reputation management impossible. You center victims early, you force transparency. You treat money as a risk factor, not a sign of credibility. You treat access as suspicion, not proof of character. And you stop letting people like Trump turn every accusation into a culture war spectacle that drowns out the victims. Because when everything becomes politics, the predator becomes controversy, and controversy is entertainment, and entertainment is harmless. But this wasn't harmless. So here's the ending. Short, clean. I wasn't protected because I was invisible. I was protected because too many powerful people found it convenient to make me complicated. And because in a system built to protect reputations, the easiest thing to sacrifice is the truth. If you want to know whether the world has changed, don't ask whether the villain is gone. Ask whether the machine is still running. Because if it is, then someone else is being handled right now. Not because there isn't evidence, but because the evidence points upward